Hi, my name is Siddhartha Dash or Sid Dash, and I'm the Chief Researcher at Chartis. Today we're going to discuss about the adoption of Gen AI in financial crime and compliance overall. For that, I have with me Chad. Chad, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Sid. So I'm Chad Hetherington. I'm the global head of product for Nice Actimize.
Thank you. So as you can see, my first question is essentially going to be around the issues around, Chad, from your perspective and where you are sitting, how have your clients, what have been the experience of your clients in incorporating Gen AI in their compliance technology stack? What is the balance between production-oriented projects versus that are still stuck in pilot or in early stage, if you will?
Sure. So I think I'd say a few things. Like every transformative technology, what we're encountering now is the adoption cycle, right? So at this point, we've seen I'd say the innovators and early adopters really jump into the mix, right? They're pushing forward with their Gen AI agendas. Now, they're doing this because they recognize the transformative nature of Gen AI, and frankly, they just don't want to be left behind. The way we like to describe it actually is, with this audience, it's kind of there's an element of FOMO, and they don't want to miss out. I think when you think about the early majority firms, they're really just starting to get into play here, and the late majority and laggards really aren't into the fold. So that's what I would say. For a second, I would say our clients are really looking to vendors like ourselves to sort of lead them on this journey, to bring our, I'll say, expertise to bear, because there's a lot of uncertainties that they need to work through, that are associated with the new technology. But there's also tremendous upside. But with that tremendous upside, there's also significant risk, right? Whether it's reputational risk, whether it's customer experience risk, whether it's financial risk, regulatory risk for that matter. So you have this, huge potential, but also risk. Now, specific to the customers that we're working very closely with, I think our AI capabilities are really embedded at the core of our platform and have been part of, our offering for a long time. So it actually makes it quite easy for our customers to enable these latest Gen AI offerings, right? And I think in general, customers that have experienced AI providers with robust AI platforms should be in a pretty good place to, move fast and enable these capabilities and leverage them. That said, I think that financial institutions that don't have that, I think it's going to be pretty complex for them to navigate, because there's the regulatory landscape, there's data privacy issues, there's a whole patchwork of, I'll say, potentially difficult data integration that's going to be required, right? So, and AI at its very foundation is really based off of data. Data provides the context. It's really the special sauce of the AI. So if firms don't have clean, accurate data pipelines, it's going to be very challenging for them. Now, if I move on to your second question, which is sort of what stage are these projects in? I'd say when we look across the landscape, the vast majority of the projects right now are in pilot mode. That said, we are seeing, some customers with production deployments and what I would call, very controlled use cases. Sometimes they've deployed just the very basic Copilot. Usually, by the way, it's to help speed or increase the velocity that their developers can code at, right? So if they want to, develop new software. We've seen some other use cases outside of financial crime and compliance, like IT help desk, that's taken off. So these are, I'd say, the use cases that we're kind of seeing in the early stage, and the balance between, what's in pilot mode and what's actually in production mode.
No, I think that's interesting and fascinating. And I think you made a very, very powerful point. The idea that AI really depends on data. And if you don't get your data right, you are not going to get you're not going to get results that are worthwhile. And I think the examples that you gave are examples where people have already got the data right for some reason or the other. I mean, you have GitHub and you have Copilot, so that's a sort of natural extension. So that sort of brings me to my second question, if you will. I mean, in terms of if you look at the pace of adoption, and you mentioned that you're moving steadily from pilot to narrow sandbox production, if you will. Do you think the pace of adoption is going to be driven more by regulatory, technological, i.e., including data, or business constraints and issues in the sense, is there a business issue for this, or are the regulators going to put a stop for that?
So I think the answer is yes. I would actually frame it the following way. There's huge interest, right? If you're a tech executive, you have a new tool to drive innovation. So, there's interest there. If you're a compliance professional, you're trying to figure out how you do more with the staff that you have. So there's interest there. And obviously, if you're a CEO, you're trying to reduce your labor footprint and ultimately reduce the total cost of compliance. That said, there is also significant fear, right? It's the dreaded hallucination, right? And the potential consequences. And it's coming from, within a financial institution, the concerns are coming from legal, information security, risk groups within the financial institution. And look, let's be honest, they're not wrong to be concerned, right? The truth is, right now, there's a very, I'll say, complex web of, governmental agencies around the globe that are all vying to own some piece of the regulatory landscape as it relates to AI. And, they're all issuing, their laws and their guidance. But, irrespective of any of that, if you think about it, an FI's most prized possession is its reputation, right? And we've seen other firms, even the firms that are leading, the current Gen AI revolution, like, the firms like Microsoft or Google, that have had some fairly public missteps, right? And FIs, they want to do everything in their power to avoid that spotlight. Now, that said, firms also have challenges around developing the talent pool, right? So there's a limited talent pool out there, with Gen AI expertise. So how do they hire up those people? Because they're going to need to if they're going to actually implement this technology at scale. And even if they have the talent base, getting back to what we mentioned earlier about the data pipelines, do they have the infrastructure to support, what's really required to take advantage of these technologies and ultimately to drive optimal AI outcomes? Now, all this said, I always try and think about things through a different lens. Basically, bringing technology to enterprise, financial institutions, it's hard, right? If you think about SaaS has been around since what, 1999? I think that's when Salesforce came to life. So, we're 25 years later, and I saw a study that Goldman Sachs published earlier this year that said only 30% of enterprise workloads were running on the public cloud today. Now, if you think about the latest, iteration of generative AI, it really began at the end of 2022 when OpenAI introduced ChatGPT. So we're only 2 years later, and really there's been a lot of progress, and a lot of firms are moving pretty quickly at this point. So when it comes to adoption, I think it really depends on the lens that you're looking through. In the context of enterprise FIs, I actually think things are moving pretty quickly. That said, the criminals are moving quickly, and we need to make sure that we're keeping pace.
I'll get to that's a very interesting observation. I think the crux of the matter is that it takes time to do things. in many ways, we tend to overestimate what can be done in the short term and underestimate what will happen in the long term, if you will.
Absolutely.
But as all of this changes, it does appear that humans will still be a critical part of that cycle. How important are humans in the loop in this process, if you will?
Yeah. So I think in the short term, until we as an industry really get our handle on the technology, the humans are quite important. There really is so much that even the tech firms that are building these LLMs, that they don't fully understand about the behavior or the output of the models. Just a simple example, right? They've shown that these models can provide very good medical diagnosis, right? Even on complex health issues. In most cases, it's better than what an actual doctor can do. At the same time, it cannot tell you how many R's are in the word strawberry, right? And there's countless, examples like this, these nuanced examples. So I think in the near term, it's going to be super important to have a human in the loop. It's going to ensure that, the outputs are accurate, that they're ethical, that they're aligned with, regulatory expectations. The way that I think about it is humans are going to provide the trust blanket in the early days of Gen AI. That said, as we look out into the future, the models are going to continue to improve. We'll understand them better. We'll be able to put in technological guardrails and not just a human guardrail. And I think at the end of the day, we'll see when we'll get to a point where AI is actually going to be smart enough to know when a human is required. And we like to say, the AI is going to sort of reverse prompt and pull a human into the loop when it's needed, right? So I think this is the reality of where we are, but the future is about agentic AI. We're going to see agents collaborating with each other and not collaborating, with humans. And these virtual agents, I think, ultimately are going to be doing the heavy lifting when it comes to enterprise workflows. So that's my view on sort of where we are and where we're going.
Right. But as you start looking into the future, there are a couple of other things that I wanted to check and discuss with you, if you will. First of all, is what is the role of regulators? What is the right balance between regulating the business out of existence and sort of playing safe? And the second thing is, I think I picked up on a point that I wanted to expand on the point that you were making, is what about the bad actors? I mean, are they leveraging technology faster? Maybe they don't have the same constraints, so there's a little bit of an asymmetry there, if you will.
Sure. So if we talk about the regulators, I think we're going to see more and more guidance. I mean, we've already started to see it. I think the challenge for firms is that everybody's going to be involved. Every state, every federal agency, multiple federal agencies, all across the globe. So these guidelines are going to evolve, and it's going to become challenging. But I think over time, we'll see that the boundaries and sort of best practices that regulators and different bodies come with and frameworks will really help FIs and it'll put a framework that everyone can operate within, that makes sense, that ensures safety and soundness, and finds the right balance. At the end of the day, it's all about balance. Finds the right balance between, making sure that we're, protected, but also making sure that we're prioritizing innovation and really leveraging technology to the fullest capability. So that's what I would say around, on the regulatory question. When it comes to the bad actors, the bottom line is historically they always move faster, than the FIs. It's been the challenge for the FIs, for a very long time. And they're using it for things like, creating synthetic identities as an example, right? And they're using it to create fake documents, right? So that you can onboard and open an account. They're using it for social engineering attacks as an example. Whether it's crafting, some personalized phishing message, or whether it's creating a deep fake video, right? And I'd say the last thing that Gen AI really does for all of us is it allows us to scale, but that means it also allows the bad guys to scale, so they can, really automate a lot. They can create attack vectors, and multiple attack vectors, and that's something that we really need to sort of be careful with, and it's why it's even more important that we adopt the technology so that we can move just as fast as the bad actors.
Or ideally faster if possible.
Ideally.
But thank you, Chad. That was a very fascinating discussion. I think we established some key themes here. We're in Act 1, Scene 1 of a long and evolving story, but issues are obviously the data and pragmatic mechanisms of how to adopt it. And I guess regulations are not always a challenge. They can define the playing field and the environment, which is obviously an important theme. Thank you.
Thanks, Sid.